Hi everybody, it's Tuesday, so that means it's Q&A day. Looking forward to answering everybody's questions. Stay with me. Any questions? Anything that's going on that you need clarification on? Anything you want to dive deep into?
Question on, I'm like old faithful, right? You need a question, here comes a question.
Yeah.
So, uh, question on the actual time of passing. The question uh, is it in some manner, is it necessary that a person who is in the process of passing, but it's taking some time,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is it possible that this person actually starts becoming mm, available or visible uh, as being in the other world, while they're physically at this point still not fully left this world.
Yes.
And it might be that the passing process is kind of slow for whatever reason, and partially under some level of sedation, thanks to medical situation, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that thus for this period they're kind of in both worlds?
Yeah, absolutely. And Catherine, that's exactly what Catherine. That's what you do, isn't it? You work with those in hospice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and they can be in both places at the same time, and especially because your spirit, Gopal, is your soul is you're part soul and part human person right now. So just because you're a human walking the earth, you still have your soul part. So they have, even when they die, their soul part can be here and there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you.
So definitely,
Yes.
definitely.
And what I've learned through the years is our soul, our soul moves between worlds. Even when we're sleeping at night, sometimes the soul will go back for a recharge. It's not as if it's physically leaving the body and then coming back, but it connects with the spirit world, the divine. It connects, and we get recharged. That's why it's so important for us to sleep at night and have a nice rest, because there's a bit of a reboot there. But what I've learned is, and then also, you know, just by witnessing, I haven't had the experience that Catherine has, but been around loved ones who were passing, who were the body was shutting down and they were getting ready to pass, and you could see them move to the spirit world. Physically, I could see this, that they are moving into the spirit world now, because now they're having a reunion and verbalizing it out loud, so we all knew that they were having this reunion with those that were already in the spirit world. And they were saying to us with their eyes closed, but can't you see them? They're right here. We're all having a nice laugh. We're all doing, we, the normal people here, we wouldn't be able to see them. But it was very evident that they were already meeting with their loved ones that had been long past. Absolutely. And Catherine's nodding her head. Maybe you've experienced that in your work.
I've also experienced even just a few weeks, a
Yeah.
week, a few days before they'll start talking to their loved
Yep.
ones, and
Absolutely.
like they're just right there. They'll just start talking, and
Yep.
it's like they're already part of that conversation even before they transition. They're just having regular conversations, and it's not anything weird or sad. They're just chatting,
Mhm.
chatting.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and I know somebody who who came close to dying, but at that time ended up not. But at that time, they were expressing to me that they were seeing not just family members, but they were also seeing, like, she was describing to me that she goes, there's a Native American Indian that's here, and he's walking in front of my door, and I know he's guarding, I know he's guarding me. And then and it was so real to her. I mean, there was also one night that she was adamant that there was a British nurse, two British nurses that had come in the middle of the night to check on her, and they had British accents. And she was so adamant on it. She was asking every nurse that came in the room, who were the British nurses that were on duty last night? And there were no British nurses on duty. So she was in between worlds. And she knew that I did this, and she finally kind of chuckled, and she goes, seeing them dead people like you, aren't I? And I said, yes, you are. And I was well aware that there was a group of Native people around her singing and bringing healing to her. I was very aware of that before that ever happened, and never said it to her. But yeah, so and my grandfather, it was a couple of weeks. He died from lung cancer, and there was a couple of weeks there that he was going in and out talking to the family members that had already passed. Yeah.
And I've seen them physically try to interact, just putting their arms up, trying to touch them. I've seen that so often.
Yes, and the one person who saw the natives and saw the two nurses said to me, I know why he didn't take me. And I went, what do you mean? And she goes, I know why I'm still here. And I went, okay, why are you still here? And she says, because my work's not done. He, as in the God, wants me to write about my experience. And I went, okay. She was supposed to go, but she didn't.
One of my first hospice patients, when I walked in to talk to her and introduce myself for the first time, we talked a little bit about, are you looking forward to crossing over? Are you afraid of it? And she said, no. She said, but I'm a little worried about what my husband's going to say when I first see him. And I said, well, why? And she said, because I put him there. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm not asking any questions. I just said, oh, I'm sure he's forgiven you. But that one caught me by surprise.
Death and dying is one of my favorite subjects because I'm weird that way. Yeah, Deborah.
So I just have to say, this conversation actually is making me feel better. At least I know there will be a moment where I'll be an outstanding medium. Anyway.
That is so funny.
I wanted to ask a different question. If this topic, if we're done, I don't know if anybody wants to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
Can I just jump in? Because I'm just curious to ask Catherine, because I've got my mother-in-law's had dementia for like 17 years. She's got a big skin cancer on her face, which is getting bigger and bigger. And they've just started her on morphine, and she's doing this end-of-life rallying because the whole family's asking me, when is she going to pass? And I'm like, I don't know. But she is doing the reaching out. She's been nonverbal for years. And she's pretty much a shell of what she was. she's doing the reaching out like this, trying to grasp. And not, when I visited, I feel her ancestors around, quite a few of them, and it's like they're all in the wings and waiting. So is this a good indication that she's nearly there? She's one of these people that's been dying for so many years, and you just think, well, I don't know, she could go on. She's eating, she's got a healthy appetite, she's, but yeah.
Well, first, everybody's different, but because she's still eating and has a healthy appetite, I wouldn't think that she's that close. However, it really depends, because I have had one hospice patient where I could actually hear him partying down the hall as I was walking down to meet him the first time, and he was jovial and laughing and having a great time, having a beverage, flirting with all the nurses and just having a fine time. And I thought, why is he here? Next morning I went in and he was gone. So on the other hand, there's one lady that I actually saw in hospice for an entire year, and she was doing the reaching out probably 6 months ago, and then talking about who was that gentleman that was just here, and where did he go. And so she did that, and then last Sunday she was sent home because she'd been there for more than a year. So you just don't know. It really just depends. But the one thing I would do is, even though she has dementia, she's largely in the other side now, since it's advanced. And I would just keep talking to her, saying anything that you think is important, in terms of transition, because she understands. Whether she understands it as a human is different, but her soul understands it. So I would go ahead and just, so many things about mediumship. I would go ahead and just express whatever you can, whenever you can, because she'll get it on a level. She'll get it on the right level. She will.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thank you. No, I do connect with her on a soul level, occasionally, and then just kind of check in and like, you okay? The loved ones are here. It's going to be great whenever you're ready. Everyone's okay. Everyone here is going to be okay. They've worked through it. Yeah. So.
That's perfect. But, you mentioned the rallying. That's kind of one of the biggest puzzles with hospice work, is you can go in and you think someone's having a great day when you haven't seen them have such a great day in so long. It's an incredible day. And then the next day they're gone. Happens a lot. It really does. So, but I'm glad you're talking to her on a soul level, because, she's in both places. And so she'll understand you on both levels.
I know. Yeah, I know she's that sort of person that when she does transition to the spirit world, she's going to be bombing my readings constantly.
Yay!
And
Thank you.
Just piggyback on going to in a same topic, but in another direction, Gopal. It's my understanding that it's very similar with a baby that's in the womb, that the soul moves between our world and their world, and at conception that the soul isn't necessarily in place, because it moves between both worlds, much like those who have dementia or Alzheimer's or something, but the soul is in flux, I guess, and at the moment they take their breath, the soul is there for good now. Yeah. So it's almost like a cycle. We're in a flux, and then if it's what I would consider a slow death, when someone's preparing to pass, it's going to be like it was before they arrived. And it's a way of them, and it's also my understanding that it's a way to prepare them. It's part of their transition, preparing them of what's to come.
I just want to actually pivot back for a second. So many, as everybody was speaking, so many thoughts came to mind. So I was thinking of this, and when you talked about a baby, I said, oh, she's going to mention it, but you went a different way, and that was fascinating, Kay. I'd never heard that, but I have heard how the soul, a baby, comes in crying, but the soul departs in joy and laughter when they're reunited.
Right.
But I was
Isn't
liking
that
it,
beautiful? Oh, that gave me goosebumps.
right? We don't
Yeah.
think of it that way. But the other thing I was thinking, a pregnant woman, right before she gives birth, that nesting instinct that takes over, like,
We know.
there's just something that
Yeah.
takes over. There's going to be a change.
There's going to
in
be a
this.
change. And I think that's just human, or maybe even animalistic behavior that we just, as, humans and animals, we instinctively, especially, mothers, the mother's intuition, not that dads don't have intuition, because they do, but a mother's intuition, there's something there that I don't think all men have. I think it can come though with men, but with women it's instinctual from the moment we're carrying. Maybe that's the difference. Hi, Hazel.
I agree. I agree. The
Yeah.
other thing I wanted to say on this topic, though, just jumped out of my head. Oh, you mentioned the anecdotal story of your friend who didn't pass, came back, and we touched, of course, last week somewhat on this. Is this akin to a spontaneous healing? These people like Anita Morjani, when there is what is called a miraculous healing, do you think it pairs up because necessarily there is work still to be done, whether they have a consciousness about it or not? At some level, I guess they do, but
Well, yeah, I do think that there are miracles, absolutely, that can occur. With this particular person, older in age, tired, just extremely tired, and had just gone through hip surgery, and then a month later fell and had to go back and have hip surgery again. So the body, she was just exhausted and tired, and I think ready.
yeah. So what is it that the soul has to still experience then?
Well, for her, she felt that it was necessary for her, because she'd been trapped, long illness, and had been trapped within the body and unable to speak. She felt, because I ended up being the one that had to help her with the writing. She felt that it was. She felt that she got the message that she needed to explain to people what it was like to be elderly and be trapped within your body, but still have a very active mind, and not to be able to communicate, not be able to do the things that you used to could do in your body, and being so dependent on others. And she felt that she was supposed to write a book about that.
I have an actual mediumship question. So, of course, for all the the mediums still doing quite a bit of developing, we all say how we want deeper, practical evidence, the gold nuggets, and that's where most of us come up short. And I heard a colleague of yours, we'll call him, recently talked about needing a curiosity to go deeper and get the kind of evidence.
Yeah.
So my problem is in thinking, well, aren't you then engaging your mind, which we're told not to do?
Right.
So it's, where is this balancing act, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah. the curiosity comes from the soul and not the physical mind. So when we like, sometimes we may get to a place in the reading and we kind of stall and we want to ask a question. We want to try to, get something. We typically do that from the mind, which will take us out of the power if we're not careful, but we cry from the soul. So we always have to remember that it's a soul to soul connection, whether they're living or not. It's always soul to soul. So therefore, it's the soul and the spirit within that's doing all of that communication. So you cry from the soul. And it's I'm not one to ask questions because I will get out of my power if I do. So I don't really ask a lot of questions. I have to be only on certain circumstances. So it's rare. I don't do it. I certainly don't do it on every reading for sure. What I've done is there's this understanding between my soul and I. Because I had issues with this because I'm not a nosy person and I never pry in people's business ever. I never know what's going on in anybody's life because I don't pry. I don't ask. They want to offer it to me, I'll listen, but I don't ask. And so I had issues with it. So it's not about me. I had to remove me from the picture. And I just said, okay, it's between my soul and I. So my soul, I allow the soul to be the curious one. So the soul starts nudging. And that makes the human side of me happy. Because I'm not prying. It's the other part of me. It's the spiritual part of me that's doing that. And that's what my spiritual side of me, that's why it's here on this earth, to do this work. So it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I take myself out of that picture. Does that make sense?
Excellent explanation. Thank you. Of course, the follow-up is, well, how do you get your soul or to lead the ship?
It's just this, I don't know. I don't know. How did I move? I haven't ever thought about that, Deborah. How did I move from here to the soul? How did I do that? I would say, yeah.
May I say something?
Yes.
Maybe could it be that your philosophy that you've incorporated into your belief system is on this subconscious level that you don't have to go to your brain to think about it? It's more in your soul, as you're explaining. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And it is on a soul level. So what I'm doing as I'm looking upward is searching within for how is it that I made this transition. And what I'm feeling here is there was a point in my development where I let go, and I just started to really truly surrender to more than me as Kay the human. And I just let go and allowed a higher aspect of me to rise and take control when I do this work. So there was just this shift in my understanding. Okay, get out of the way and allow your spirit and your soul to rise so that it can step up to the plate and do what it's come here to do, work with souls living and not living. That's the feeling that I was getting, which is kind of what Hazel was alluding to as well. Different way of explaining it, but I think we're on the same page there, Hazel. Yeah.
So how did you accomplish that surrender? Because I feel like, I'm doing that, saying that, trying that, feeling that, attempting it, but how did you actually like accomplish it?
That's an internal, it's an internal growth of my spiritual journey. So I get exactly what you're saying, because I said it for years and I wasn't getting anywhere. And my tutors were always saying to me, go within, go within, go within, go within. To the point where I got tired of hearing them tell me, go within. But I did go within. I listened to them, and I just kept going within. And there, some of you've already heard me tell the story. There was a point in my life where I actually, I was in a deep meditation, and I had my guide with me. And I wasn't trying to do this. This just happened. It took me by complete, total shock and surprise. But all of a sudden, in my meditation, I saw a beautiful being of colors, and I knew it was a soul. And I found out that it was me that I was seeing. And this love, like I never experienced that kind of pure love when I felt that. And my guide said to me, you're seeing you the way I see you, the way everyone in my world sees you. This is who you are on a spiritual level. And I was a bawling mess because I had no idea that I was love like that. Because I know me as the human me. So I never ever thought of myself as a spiritual being in that way. Although I said it all the time, we're all spiritual beings, we're all spirit, we're all energy. I'd said it a million times, but that day I saw it and felt it. Changed my world completely. And I think that was a huge turning point for me. And I don't think everybody has that experience, but I'm one of those people where you kind of have to have a frying pan and hit them over the head for them to get it. And I think that was the frying pan that hit me on the head and allowed me to, for the first time, see myself truly as a spiritual being. And it was at that moment that I knew without a shadow of a doubt I was here to be a medium. Truly, no questions asked. This is why you're here. And it's not your first time. You've been a medium many times, but this is why you're here. And so at that point, everything within me just woke up wide open, and then everything just started coming together on my journey. If that makes sense.
Beautiful, beautiful. So it'll happen. It'll happen when the time is right.
I think it is when the time is right, and your way may be completely and totally different than mine. I think we're all, everybody's experiences are different.
Yeah, thank you.
And Nicole, did you have a comment, question?
I was just curious if you think that it had anything to do with, in conjunction of how far along you were healed, or so when you all were talking about this, I intuitively thought to allow your soul to kind of take over and kind of let your ego or yourself to kind of take a back seat. If that has any correlation on how much you've healed as a person. And if so, was that meditation that you were just talking about, was that when you kind of felt like you had confronted your shadow work or whatever it's called, or was that at the beginning of your healing, or you don't really correlate being healed with allowing that higher self to come through?
Honestly, at that point in time in my development, I really didn't understand any of what you just said.
Oh, okay.
All I knew is I sat in the power. I didn't know it was the power. I didn't know. I never heard of that. But I was sitting in the power because it felt exactly the way it feels now, that I do know what sitting in the power is. So I just sat in the power every day with my guide, and that's exactly what I was doing. No, it wasn't the end of my healing by far, because you're always healing, because crap happens. It never stops, does it? Because that's just part of life. We're always working on the inner work, always, till we leave this world, and even beyond. We'll continue to work on the inner work. But no, I don't know. And I know I wouldn't. I know I still had a lot of healing to do. I can tell you that for sure. I don't know why it happened on that day. Maybe I do believe that there was something that said she's ready. Did I say that? Did my soul say that? Did my guys say that? Decide that? I don't know. I don't really know. It just happened. Just happened. So that was a huge shift. That was a huge shift in my development, because I was still very much going, I might be a medium. Maybe. But I was working in churches at that point, and I was still had that little bit of doubt there. And I was still working in churches and doing demonstrations, and still had a little bit of doubt. So maybe they finally just said, she needs to get over this. I don't know.
Everyone's experience is so different and so unique, and I know myself, I like to have those great big, incredibly powerful experiences, but you can't, and I have in the past, many, many years ago, had some phenomenal experiences when I was doing a lot of meditating, and I was actually living in an ashram and, sitting for hours every day, and phenomenal. But my development over the last year and a half was, the only way I can describe it is, when I've been putting so much effort into it, it's just been like a camera lens, and the aperture widens a little tiny bit at a time, and a little bit more comes in, a little bit more. And I think what I've learned is just to trust that process, and not kind of reach for the big experiences, because that just becomes another energy that you're battling against. So it's just a real trust and surrender. And if it's, and it is changing organically of its own accord. So, yeah, I think that's the most that I've learned. But I did want to also share, touching on what Deborah was saying, that one about getting your mind out of the way and trusting the curiosity of the soul. One of my tutors gives us this exercise, and I found it really helped me. And that's, when you're sitting in a power, or you're about to read, is like dropping your conscious mind down to your solar plexus so that it's in that power. And for some reason, that really just works for me. So I thought I'd share that, and as something to try.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like Chris. Did you learn that from Chris?
Yeah, that's Chris. Yeah.
Tell us to do that all the time.
Yeah, it works. I like it. It just helps me. Sometimes the mind can be like I liken it to a motorboat buzzing around on the ocean, and I'm down here at the bottom of the ocean. So it's just like, stop all that buzzing, just come down here and work from there.
So, Tony, to do that, do you just feel like you're pulling it down? I mean, like how mechanically, or how, conceptually do you do it? Do you just feel like you're pulling it down?
No, I feel like it's more like if you throw, a stone into the ocean, and it just falls down. Just let it fall down.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, and your solar plexus is where the soul in the spirit. That's where everything's happening. So just allowing it to draw there. So
I'm making a connection which it's kind of okay. So let me just say, coming from a 12-step recovery program background. I just connected to this commonality that this whole process of getting in touch with my higher self or my soul is actually akin, very parallel to the process of a practicing alcoholic dropping their denial about their alcoholism. It is, the connection always exists. The reality always exists. What's blocking the experience of it is my denial of it. The denial that my little conscious ego being, call it whatever you will, that insisting that I am all there is, there ain't nothing there, that I can't feel it, I have to die before I feel it. You call it in whatever manner, whatever level of compartmentalization that I practice, so long as I hang on to it, for that long, the experience of it is blocked because I am blocking it. And the process of recovery from alcoholism begins with stopping to deny that I am an alcoholic. And then for the first few days, weeks, months, years, depending upon, the alcoholic still says, I don't feel sober yet. I still feel like a drink. I don't feel sober yet. And then the sponsor tells him, cool it. Don't bother about how you are feeling. Just pretend that you are feeling sober. Just pretend that you don't want a drink. Just pretend as if you are able to stop drinking. Just pretend that you are able to connect with your higher power and ask for help. You don't worry that you're not feeling like you are able to connect to your higher power. Then we start doing the things that we do where we connected and sober. And lo and behold, over time, that experience becomes real. The experience of connection becomes real. The experience of feeling sober becomes real. All it required for me is to drop my, I'm saying this for me because this, you know, that's my favorite, I don't feel it. It's my favorite peeve. So I just need to drop that denial and I'm on my way. The experience in whatever manner that works for me in this configuration, if I may call it that experience will follow in due course. I don't have to wait for it.
It's interesting that you say pretend, because the first time I ever went to a circle, I went by myself. The tutor called on me first. The only American in the group. Well, let's let her work first. Let's see what she's all about. I was scared to death to even go. I showed up late and everything. I mean, it was, and I'm never late for anything. Couldn't find a parking spot, but anyway, they let me in, and she called on me and pointed to the lady sitting directly across from me and said, I want you to do a psychic reading on her and start at her feet and go all the way up to her head and share all the important milestones of her life. And she was probably in her 70s at that time, so she'd had a nice long life. And I just looked at the tutor and went, no, I'm not psychic. I only see dead people. And she laughed and she goes, no, you're psychic. And I said, nope, not psychic. I only see dead people. And she says, nope. We had this little banter going back and forth, and she wouldn't let me out of it. And so I just closed my eyes, and to myself I said, okay, just fake it. Stared at her feet, and I just opened my mouth and stuff started coming out. Because I was adamant, I'm not a psychic. I just see dead people. But I did. I started at her feet, went to her knees, went to her waist, moved to the shoulders, all the way up to the head, and gave all the milestones of her life, faking it. And it was all correct. Because I got out of the way and I just said, Just fake it. She's not going to leave you alone. Just fake it. And so I did. But for, I'd say a good 2 years, maybe longer, I didn't believe I was a psychic. And so every time I was asked to do psychic work, nothing happened. But when I said fake it, it worked. Or when I wasn't trying to go psychic, it worked because I got out of the way.
Believe it or not, there is actually a Vithi AA slogan, fake it to make it.
Fake it to make it. Because I gave myself permission to open my mouth and talk. And I was shocked.
I'd like to go back to where you were talking about having your soul ask the questions.
Yeah.
I don't understand the difference between you asking and your soul asking. Is it just comes more naturally or flows differently? Because it still sounds like questions, my brain says, or my ego says.
Yeah, I get that totally. For me, especially when I was first started doing this, I'd take my hands over the solar plexus. And that was my crying from the soul kind of thing. And I'm sure there were times where it was coming from the soul and times when it wasn't coming from the soul until you just start to learn to do it. But I also feel that there was at some point in my development where it just kind of became this automatic thing here where, because I used to have conversations with myself and conversations with my guides as well, still do, where I would just say, can we just get this set up where I'm working from this angle or I'm working from that angle? And I can't say for sure because it's been a long time, but I would suspect that's probably what I did. I had that conversation of, can we? Because I knew that I was supposed to be crying out from the soul. I knew that because I was taught that. Wasn't taught how to do it, but I was told to cry out from the soul. Well, how do you do that? I don't even know how to tell you how to do that. Other than for me, I just put my hands there and I would just cry out. In my mind, I was crying out from the soul. But I would almost bet I had that conversation with my higher self and with my guides. Let's start working from the soul. Because I knew that's what I needed to do. Because everything we do, psychic or mediumistic, it's from the soul. Everything we do. There's a little bit of the mind comes in because they need the mind a little bit. But it's a tiny bit. They need our imagination because it's our imagination that they use to bring in evidence and show us different ways. Our experiences and our imagination is how they can get through to us to show us what it is they're trying to tell us with images and sounds or however they do it. Yeah. Sorry, Kathy. I wish I could just tell you do this and then do this and do this, but I can't really tell you that because it's an internal thing. Good questions, everybody. Really good questions. I wished I could answer some of them, but I like the ones where I can't answer them because then it makes me stop and think, how did I do that? How did I do that? I think it's all internal. It's about the journey of your soul. And at some point, your soul steps up and says, this is my job. Let me do it. And the mind, the physical mind, steps to the side. And the soul, that allows the soul to rise. When the soul rises, that's when the soul can do their work. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's kind of brilliant. Maybe that's what it is. Because it's about the rising of the soul's journey. So how do you get the soul to rise? Go within. What do you do when you go within? Just be within. sit in the power of your own soul. Sit in the power of spirit. So you can sit in the power of your soul. That's one thing you can do. And then the next level up is sit in the power of spirit. So when you're sitting in the power, you can sit in the power of your own soul, learn all about you. You can sit in the power of spirit and be bonding and connecting with spirit and learning about spirit.
You know, I can't speak for, I'm sure, many of you. I find the more people I meet who are mediums, I'm in the rarer minority. I'm someone who didn't feel as though I've had any spiritual experiences, or I certainly didn't sense spirit presence till just a few years ago when I started studying. So I'm sure it was my soul calling me to do it, and I answered. But so what my point is, when making, it took me, I'm sure, 7 months to feel confident that I was making a connection to the spirit world. And the same, but how do you do it? How do you do it?
How do you
But
do
the
it?
more you do it, you know, and then one day it's like, oh, you just start to sense. And the more you do it, and then of course it becomes so. I really think what you're saying is true. If we have the intention, the soul knows what we need to do. And if we just give it the appropriate environment to do it, it will take.
Yeah. And when you sit in the power, I see that as a way of nurturing the soul. When you sit in silence or you sit in prayer, that's all about nurturing the soul. When you're healing from within, you're healing the soul aspects, the experience the soul has had. It's all taking care of you on a soul level, which is just as important as taking care of ourselves on a physical level. It's just the spiritual aspect of everybody, and we all have a spiritual aspect, whether we choose to believe or not. We all have that spiritual connection to a higher power. So we all have it. We can't not have it. Some open up to it and some don't.
Welcome to Mediums Anonymous.
It kind of feels that way, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, guys. That was a really nice nice conversations, guys. Good questions. Good.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you so much.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.